Hello, everybody. Hello, Rasheed.
Good to be back. Thank you, Vlad.
Thank you for joining us for this fourth part of the series. We've discussed the nature of life, the nature of mind, and the nature of the heart so far. And I believe it's going to all come together in this part 4. Rasheed, can you tell us a little bit about how we do this?
Yeah, I guess this last bit that we might be wondering, and certainly the mind will be wondering, is this thing about finding and following one's own unique path, really. Now, it's not really a question that we ask ourselves when we're born. You know, we're just doing what we're doing, and then when we become an infant, we're crawling and we're playing and we're just enjoying the whole thing. The whole thing's an adventure, right? So it's not that one path or that other path. I mean, it's the whole thing seems to be blissful in the whole experience. That's interesting for us to note. Later on in life, it's either choosing this dress or this shirt or this thing or this path, this person to marry, this person to not marry, this person to thinking, this person to avoid, this person to embrace, this house to, you know, to the division, decisions, derision. So perhaps the first thing for us to do at this particular point is to remember that the nature of life is uncertainty. We come and we go all the different seasons, as we discovered in part 1. Then there's the nature of the mind, which I was just kind of describing there really, which is noise, ideas, concepts, ideals, ideology, deciding, defining, calculating, adding, subtracting, perceiving, judging, misjudging, striving, and seeking. Then there's the nature of the heart, which often emerges when there's that hunger or that thirst, that hunger to find out who am I, or nothing else is working, that thirst, the desire or fear, or it can be brought about by all sorts of things, sense of one's own mortality, or so many different things can make it happen. When our ideas don't seem to add up to what we thought they would. When this idea, because bear in mind, that's another thing for us to bear in mind, which we often forget. Everything that we do is our idea of what something. So when I'm going after something, it's my idea of what this partner's going to be, what my idea of what this car or what this house or what this job, my idea. So it's no surprise when we find it's something else. So the heart journey is one of realizing that dance and another way of starting off from that kindness and compassion, appreciation for oneself, life itself, realizing that this experience, certainly through this localized unit, this mind-body thing, seems to be very, very finite, and it tends to be one, therefore, of becoming more compassionate to oneself and to and others. And so it's the process of embracing oneself and embracing life itself. So then the question is really, and that often goes hand in hand with that, the whole thing of who am I, why am I here? Again, our title series, Finding Yourself. Right, so once that's happened, once I've come to enough answers or the falling away of the questions, which is actually what often happens, because I find while I'm here, you know, if I want ideas and concepts about who brought me here, or what force and what name I call it, fine. You know, and that's fine, that's valid too, if I want this label or that label. But what's more important is the heartfulness. So whatever lens one's looking at it, the scientific, the humanistic as being humane. If it's through religion, then being godly, being kind, being compassionate, juice of me. So whether one's looking at it scientifically, one's looking at religiously, whether one's looking at spiritually, it's the same thing. How can I live heartfully? It's effectively the same thing. Whatever those labels are. The qualitatively, it's about the heart, compassion, kindness, isn't it? So different people come at this from a different ideological point of view. doesn't matter. The heart has room for it all. And interesting, that's a teaching in all of these different things, whatever, whatever it is. So, but we often get caught up in the labels of the minds. That's just something to really, for the mind to be aware of. So the heartful journey then, I'm then left with, okay, maybe I've got these ideas and ideals and whatever, but okay, how am I going to, what am I going to do for a living? How am I going to engage with this thing of life? In a way, there's two things to bear in mind here, almost two ways. Once the heartfulness bubbles up in somebody, I can know somebody wonderful, they also happen to be a coach, and they're an academic and magical person. They also happen to be a musician. I was fortunate enough at a certain point to do some work with them on their own journey. And we were having a conversation about whether they were going to do this or to do this path or that path in their life. I said, it's of no consequence which of these paths you take, because actually your heartfulness means that it will be rich, you'll always be a healer. Whether you're a musician, whether you're this, whether you're that, it's inconsequential, do you see? So on one level, from the heart, whatever I do, whether I'm a bus driver, whether I'm a president, whether I'm a secretary, whether I'm a scientist, it's inconsequential because I'm doing that from the heart. Kindly, compassionately. Whether I'm a storekeeper or a surgeon, I'm treating people with kindness, and everything is a possibility of richness and growth. Because I came to the surgeon because my life was on the line. I came into the shop because I couldn't cope with being in my own thoughts in my own home. And so that moment where that person's with me and smiling at me and giving me kindness saved my life. The person on the street. So there's no hierarchy in one profession to the other. That's got nothing to do with this. So it becomes a different question. It's a different approach. This thing about finding my path from the mind. You see, it's completely different. Otherwise, it's, oh, isn't this dress or that dress, this shirt or that? No. So it would seem to be far more of a tuning in. Well, what are my passions? What are my interests? What are my skills? People's parents will often tell them that from very, very early, you know how people often say the personality was there. I'm like 9 years older than my youngest sister. So her personality, her strength, and lots of these qualities were already there very, 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 very young. Or the person who was very athletic, they were always climbing on the chairs or whatever. The person who was really chatty, they were always like hugging people, or the person who's, you know what I mean? Or the person musical, always knocking things or whatever before. So very often it would seem that some of the things in terms of the personality, it would seem that some of the things in terms of some of the gifts or the talents are there. And it would seem that some of the things of the preferences or the this, that, or whatever is there already, as is some of the genetic makeup. Okay, so lots of the stuff would seem to be there before mind, which is again interesting for the mind to just take note of. Isn't that interesting? Because even those interests, those desires, were there prior to the mind having anything to do with it, really? Because often from two, the person's tapping, crawling, jumping, whatever, and the parents will say, oh yeah, you were doing that from, do you know what I mean? So sometimes even our thoughts growing up, it's not, we've developed ideas about this. This is important for us to note it, just because sometimes through this, it's a bit like you said, when we were in the last talk where we were beginning to talk about some of the things about the silence, you described how sometimes in the presence there becomes more clarity. So by falling still, there's often more clarity. Well, who am I? What's really important to me? So anyway, but then the mind might still be asking, yeah, Rasheed, I hear that, but what am I going to do? So from a mind point of view, what's most dear to my heart? What's most important? When all's said and done, what's the most important? Ask oneself that question. And it usually is first of all, okay, there's my health, my well-being, my loved ones. Okay. And appreciating this experience of life. Usually is what happens when we fall still and we ask these questions. then one can ask oneself, and I invite all the listeners just to be still, maybe close their eyes and ask, what are things in life I'm most passionate about? What are the things that are most dear to my heart? I think people, or I've always been interested in fixing things or in making things or creating. You know, what I've always loved to design, to draw. What are those passions? What are those things that you're always interested in? What are the things that you'd find it almost impossible to not do? This is where it begins to merge with coaching, Vlad. You know, these things. What is it that is, what are those things that are so dear to my heart? What's the common thread in all the things that one's done? What's the common thread? So if I was to look at my own life, I first of all, when I was a kid, I wanted to be author. I was writing these books from very early on, and I ended up working in media, and then I was a singer and performer, and I was a Samaritan volunteer, as I mentioned, and then I'm a coach, I'm a trainer, and so on. And once, a few years ago, I realized, well, what's the thread? Well, the thread is always communicating with people. This is the thread. What's the common thread? So I'd say just sit with that. Let it make itself known to you. What's it you're most dear to you? What are the things that you're most good at? You just find easy. And it will probably be a marriage of your passions and the things that you're good at. If there are very, very practical questions about the how and all of that kind of stuff, yeah, sure, somebody might come to a Vlad or a Rasheed when Rasheed's wearing his coaching hat. But really, the essence of this begins with the silence and the stillness and sitting there. It's one thing doing what you love for a living, and it's another thing doing what you love with love. So you might find in this situation, when you get to this point, you might realize, actually, I love this thing, being a trainer. I love this thing that I do, being a doctor, being a nurse. I love this thing, being a teacher that I am. And it's just about bringing more love to it. So for some people, Vlad, as we get to this point, for some people, it's going to be a case of realizing that they're doing what they are always about, what they love, but it's about doing it with different energy, less mind, more heart. So that's one thing. If that's the journey, it's then returning to this space and approaching it from the heart. If one's doing something other than what resonates with one's heart, then it might well be the beginning of a different looking at of where am I at? Am I ready? Am I willing to embrace a different path? What are my circumstances? What do I need to think about? Is it just me involved? Are there other people who are dependent on me, or da-da-da-da? And some of these practical questions. This is the moment, Vlad, where you pointed to before, that the mind becomes then very, very useful. One can ask very practical questions. Okay, where am I? What do I need to survive? How much money do I need to pay? Am I going to just quit my job? Am I going to do this? Who else? And we can ask ourselves those sensible questions and make rational decisions, but with the heart as well. That's the beginning of then this process of finding one's path.
No, I find it very interesting that you've been presenting the heart as preceding the mind, because I feel when somebody might go about trying to answer those questions of what would be the best path for me in terms of, call it what you will, a career, earning a living, whatnot, one might go about it, one might try to strategize it first, and perhaps what we've been discussing, what you're suggesting is that the strategy should come second.
Yes, what I'm inviting. I mean, of course, if we want to put the strategy first and the mind first, by all means. The chances are, if you're on this journey of the heart, of finding oneself, we find that doesn't quite do it, or it's not watertight. Because I might have a strategy and be absolutely sure about it today. I'm going to do this and go, tonight, tomorrow, I've got second thoughts. but I'm not going to have a second. I'm not likely to have. You don't actually, if you think about it, let's look at it logically and thinking. You don't, unless you've had a heart surgery, you don't actually have a physical change of heart. The thoughts may change all the time, but you're not going to have a physical change of heart. So the really sitting with heart is really about really connecting to oneself on this very, very subtle level of, first of all, appreciation, what's really there. The movement of the mind tends to be a movement of what's not there or what needs to be fixed or what needs to be fine-tuned or improved or won, in broad terms, in broad terms. So the heart bit is this what feels right to me, what feels dearest to me. And it tends to bring to our attention some of those things that are already there. Aha, well, I love this, I like this, these things seem to be what I seem to be good at. The mind will then, at this point, it becomes requires a little bit of care, because of this mind, the mind will come in, and of course, over time, what will happen is that the dance, the alignment between the two, which is where we're kind of arriving at here, begins to happen, where I'm able to be still, be silent, be present, be with myself, realize, okay, I'm not sure, I feel this doesn't feel right for me, what have you. And then I can sit with, okay, what do I want to do? Then at that moment, there's an alignment between the head and the heart, because I'm here, I'm still, I'm with myself. Then I can ask the mind, okay, well, what is it that, what feels right? So there's that movement from, first of all, here, where it's centered with being with myself, and then the mind can come in, but it's from a strong base. So you're right, that preceding is from the settling in, not from a noisy, is it this or is it that? It's a bit like the difference between I often used to talk about, as kids here, we used to have a thing called a roundabout, where kids go when you can push it round and so on. So if you go push it round, then you become really dizzy, okay? And I don't know if you've ever had that experience on that. And then when you jump off, even the world's still dizzy. So if I'm making decisions just purely from the mind, and is it this or is it, it's a bit like that. I'm not likely to be as still, as stable. Whereas if I can, first of all, it's a bit like when we breathe anyway, when people's jittery, and physically the body is all over the place. When we breathe, settle, and pause in, we tend to be just far more then grounded and far more centered within ourselves. So that then, if from there then we strategize, adding the strategy on top, then there's more of an alignment. So we're using both then head and heart, winning hearts and minds. We're utilizing both. And we become better at that. The more we walk down this path, the better we come at dancing between the two. And we become aware when the mind has become too noisy, or I've become too mind, I'm too much the strategist trying to fine tune and thinking. We spot that happening very, very, very quickly, and we're able to recenter. And then naturally, when the mind's required, the mind will come to the fore. It's a bit like a calculator. When you need the calculator, you reach for the calculator. You're not going to reach for it all the rest of the time because it's not required.
That's a very interesting metaphor. I was thinking as you were talking that one could see the mind as the element which implements the vision of the heart. And what happens is once the heart transmits the vision, the mind starts to analyze the vision and goes like, that's not really possible, or that's really difficult, or how are we going to do that? So it starts to dissect the vision and perhaps present obstacles. And depending on this dialogue between, I think, the heart and the mind, there is a chance, and I might be wrong about this, but I think a lot of people struggle with this, there is a chance of the mind taking over, bringing so many obstacles to the point where the decision, let's say, is, let's forget the vision. This is too difficult to implement. Let's just focus on something achievable. But of course, this is mainly the mind speaking. So then perhaps one ends up with a direction in life which is not nourishing the whole being.
And what you described there, Vlad, is what can happen and what can happen so very, very, very quickly. The mind can jump in and kind of take over, and with good intention to plan, prepare. And a good example of that is like when we're going on a holiday. It's such a good example. The mind kicks in, it plans, prepares. What do I need? Where am I going to stay? What bits of the language do I learn? How much money do I need? Who do I need to speak to? How many suitcases do I need? It's a brilliant example of when the mind kicks in with good effect. But the mind might also kick in when we actually don't know. So it does that on the holiday in a good way too, because it then begins to picture where we're going and where we're going to stay in order to plan, to prepare, and also to try and protect. The difficulty is that sometimes its perception, it then spins 1,000,001 different ideas and thingies, and it can overheat very, very, very quickly without kind of care. So we've got to just kind of spot when it tends to do that. You know, it just kind of, mind just spins ideas and so on, which is why, a bit like windows gather dust. You know, flowers gather, debris. So it's a bit knowing that sometimes, I call this process often like the brushing the dust from the flower. This process of just then connecting back in with the heart, just tuning back into the heart, because I realize, okay, that might not be doable, that might be doable, and let me just try, let me just try that, because sometimes the mind's, oh, you can't do that, or this person's going to think that, then it becomes a whole different kind of ball game. So it does become slightly kind of tricky, and there's this dance that's constantly going on within this human conditions, because it would seem as though we become so conditioned to this living through mind, through our adulthood, and pretty much from, kicks in from our childhood, and we're taught this, and then do this, and then do that next, and so on. So it's very difficult for us to not look through mind first. That's the first window we tend to go to. So it's just I think the most useful thing here in a day-to-day living way is just noticing when, in the same way when we notice that the body is beginning to overheat and we're beginning to get a temperature and we need to rest and relax. Notice when the mind's beginning to overheat or overproject or over-problematize or can't work things out. And then, is it that I need help? Is it that I need support? Is it that I need guidance? Is it that I need a break? Gently asking these questions. And my key word here that can be very useful is then gently. If we look at gently, look, gently consider, gently. We've got to become then discerning. When are the times when analysing is needed? Usually it will be far fewer times than we think. There will be times to analyse. I'm going into this spreadsheet. Is it going to be this? It's going to be that. Is it going to be this or is it going to be that? Is it going to be this amount or that amount? Analysing might be. But very often it will be something subtler. To look. To consider. Gently to consider. To reflect. So that then there are all these different qualities of mind that are possible for us to gently reflect. Not for us to admonish or beat ourselves up, genuinely to reflect. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Like we do in coaching, the powerful reflecting, which brings deep insight. To look. Not to, genuinely, not to necessarily to look. So even things when we talk about visualizing, when they're done, we've got to do it mindfully. When am I visualizing? What's my intention here? Is it trying to fix, to solve, or to resolve? Visualizing sometimes can be a very, very, very powerful thing, but I've got to realize it's within the context, that to give me more of an idea of this, or to help me conceptualize this project or this cover or this thing, but not to spend too much time, all these different states of mind. It's knowing how much time almost to be in those particular kind of places. But we become better at it the more it is that we start from the heart and we tune back into the heart and we are heart-centered and we come back to the heart. Remembering, I often say to people, just remember that your heart is more nearer your center than the head. So just coming back to this place. And different things will do it. Nature will do it. A good night's sleep will do it. A chat with a good, mindful, kind friend will do it. going to a mindful coach. So many things will do it. A good, rich book will do it. So, yeah, because we've got to remember ultimately that there are no guarantees, there are no certainties. Every castle is sound, every castle will, everything that Ivan can gain and so on, it will come and go, the economies will go up and down, you know, so we're only left with our skills, our talents, what nature has and so on. So it's important for us not to spend too much time in the grasping, because otherwise we're trying to hold on to things that eventually we will let go of. But of course, we do at the same time want what bits of stability and security that we can gather, and that's fine. And we tend to be quite good at that day to day. So in a way, we don't need our help with that. It's more our help to just be calmer and quieter, to be able to make more rounded, let's say, decisions. And to realize, is it a decision or is it just a driver? We become more aware when we're more set in the heart. So that begins to really bring us to a close, but I think that it invites us always back to the heart, always the heart. Any more thoughts that you have, or things that you feel, Vlad, that you're wanting, that would be useful for me to wrap up for anybody who's here? But the mind is the thing that wants to wrap up. This is the thing. Well, I could be watching this and so on. I want to wrap this up. How can I keep hold of what Rasheed's saying? It's an impossibility. We will continue to need to drink to eat, to nourish the body. That's the nature of this flow, this flowing, beautiful flowing thing of life. The rain will continue to fall, all of these things will continue to happen. Sometimes in life there's no problem, sometimes in life there's no solution. I'm not saying to give up, I'm saying to live heartfully. In every moment, every conversation is rich, it's nourishing. Whether I do this or do that, it's nourishing, it's kind, somebody benefits.
I don't know if you can hear it, but I've got the church bells ringing right now.
I can just about hear it.
And yeah, it's serendipitous, let's say, because you were talking about how everything passes, right? Mm-hmm. We on the one hand, we have this need to provide ourselves with security, mm-hmm. which implies a certain not necessarily attachment, but certain elements that are fixed to some degree, so that we have the right.
Yes. Yeah. Attachments trying to hold on to.
Yes.
To build and protect. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are these elements that we try to hold on to, right? Mm-hmm. And yet, as you say as well, that we will have to let go of them sooner or later. Whatever it is, it will have to be let go of. And so I think this is a very important, let's say, difference between the mind and the heart. To me, the way I understand it is that how you define your long-term strategy. What are you pursuing? Because if you're pursuing the promises of the mind, right? The measured, the concrete, the thing you can hold on to because it's palpable and it's perhaps determined in some way by society, offered, and so on and so forth. That, as a lot of people are noticing, is perishable. It doesn't seem to last. It needs to be let go of. And yeah.
So the mind. So the things what we've got here is that the mind will continue to strive and try and protect and build. And the mind also needs a plan. It wants a plan. So I'm coaching people, I say the mind needs a plan. So it's about head and heart, like I talk about in the book, so I'll take this. So the mind wants a plan. And that's great. It's like going on holiday. It wants a plan, it wants to have routes and so on. And that just helps it to kind of help you on a very, very pragmatic sense. What's useful at the same time is this recognition about the perishability of life, that all the seasons will come. And my tip would be, become like a farmer. The best way that the farmer can farm is to get to know the seasons. what winter's like, what spring is like, the nature of the different seasons. That will be our best chance, if you like, to have a rich, nourishing life, by beginning to understand all the seasons. Winter will do one thing, and it tends to be cold, and it tends to be barren, and often we may not survive it. So autumn and fall is another thing where we try and protect and gather and and store. And spring is another thing where things are birthing and so on. Summer is another season of play. So we can have all of these seasons in a day, or in a moment, or in a lifetime. So it's worth sometimes being, this is just metaphorically, but it can be useful to be mindful. It's useful for the mind, but it's useful for the heart, actually, to realize and to just learn to understand the seasons of life. But love is the one thing that will serve us in every situation. It's the medication. It is it's the destination. It's the medication. Make it your heart's vocation. The heart, love, kindness is the best advice. It's the one thing I would recommend. It's the one thing I would, it's the one thing that I would recommend to nourish the kindness, gratitude, compassion. These things will be nourishing whatever the events show up. But getting to learn to watch the nature and understand the rhythm, the movements of life. So we embrace it. There's two choices, to fight it or embrace it. If we fight it, we will lose, because we are of it, we're part of it. If you embrace it, you become one with it and you become lived. Perhaps this is the invitation. Perhaps this is the invitation I'm seeing. If I embrace it, then it would seem that there's perhaps a possibility that life and myself will merge, will melt into one. That's something for the mind to can sit with it, if it wants to consider with it. Perhaps that's a possibility. Perhaps that's infinite. It's going to happen in some way or shape or form anyway, whichever lens you're going to look at it through, right? The person who's the scientific or whatever, and the thing goes to dust or whatever. The person who believes religiously that I'm going to go back to my car, I'm going to come back again. But perhaps there's a possibility through, whilst we're here, of being aligned at one, to be able to dance with life. We still have that sense of our self-separateness from life and from the mind and this and that, me localized, but there can perhaps be also the sense of a oneness with it. So I don't need to be so fearful about it. I am accepting of it. Maybe it's the kind of thing that parents often have to get used to, that moment where they're kind of letting go of their kids. It's like this funny thing of to belong and not to belong, and it's separate and so on. Maybe it's that strange kind of dance of letting it be, letting it do its own thing, but still caring and having that protectiveness toward it. Do you know what I mean? So, but kindness, compassion, gratitude, appreciation, and just enjoying the mystery and the wonder of this thing. And to live life by heart. Finally, then it's to say, through, maybe I'll say this as the last thing for this time. Your job is to do your job, by which I mean your life's work, really showing up from your heart. Your job is to do your job with all your heart, to the best of your ability. Life will go its own merry way at its own merry pace. But if you do, you and life will be the richer for you being here. That's my tip. Your job is to do your job, in other words, your life's work. Show up from the heart, live life from the heart, to the best of your ability. Life will go its own merry pace. All sorts of things happen. The economy will do this, the environment will do this, will happen, that will happen. But if you do, it means that I'm showing up, I'm living life richly, I'm kind, I'm treading kinder, more gently in this earth, I'm treating people more kindly. Life will be kinder, my mind will be quieter. And then life, my life and everyone's life will be richer for me being here. Everything else, you know what I mean? That concern oneself with that, but that will make a huge, huge impact. Everybody who you meet, heart will be touched, their life will be touched, will be enriched. That's the invitation of the heart. There's nothing more that can be said. That's it. Everything else is mind.
Yeah, it's a powerful message, and I think a lot of people need to hear it. I believe that a lot of people would love to hear it, would benefit from it, as you say.
And just one person can touch a million. during the course of their life, I wonder how many people we meet. I wonder how many people one person will meet during the course of their life. If each one, and so many people have said it, the Gandhis, the this, the that person, if I just myself, because often I will be concerned, this person, that person, of course we care and all that stuff, but if I myself, if I, this listener is touched by this is how I'm going to live my life, then that will be rich. So I'd say to somebody who might be daunted by this, don't be, focus on you, concern yourself with you, you live richly, you do the thing that you can do, you show up with heart. Even if everyone else is losing, you show up with life. With that, you have kindness and compassion. Life will be rich. One person's life will be saved. You know, and it, you know, and when I mean one person's life, I mean yours and somebody else's. You know what I mean? It's immeasurable. How many, and this is the other thing, how many hearts is it then it's possible to touch? Take the people who do this. The people who we may even never have said thank you to, who's touched our heart, the teacher we never told who enriched our life, the person, the surgeon we never got a chance to thank. So this stuff happens all the time, immeasurably. It's often immeasurable, the impact, the number of people whose lives are improved. The more we just become conscious of this, the possibility becomes great. So I'd say, don't become disheartened in this journey. Yeah.
Once somebody does this, as you say, that they, even if no matter what happens around them, they continue to live from the heart, to be present, to do their life's work as they feel is best suited to them.
And to meet everyone compassionately from the heart. Then imagine that, isn't it? You know, Vlad, that. So it means that I'm not just for me, I'm then mindful that, yes, for me, and I've got this peace of mind, but I'm trying to meet people kindly. And even if I fall down or making it, I then try next time to be more mindful, or I apologize. How rich is that? That's immeasurable. Somebody scientifically watching this will probably be able to make a calculation based on how many people. It's probably quite unfathomable, the impact of that.
Yeah, it's the kind of leadership we need today. Because clearly leadership around the world in all its shapes and forms is a bit in a crisis right now, I feel. Yeah. We can see it.
On to our next series, Vlad, and that might lead us beautifully to our next series of you know, talks or other things that we've been talking about. But you're right. You're absolutely right. Tomorrow's leaders will lead, not dictating, I was saying, not dictating from front or pushing from back, but from the center, from the heart. But also what you point to is that self-leadership. Because for too long, we've expected this person or that person to show me or to save me or to this or that or whatever. So that self-leadership and that self-efficacy, because we all, you know, we've all got a role on the boat. If I, as a passenger, see what do you call it, an iceberg, then it's my responsibility to tell the captain too. And if I'm one of the thingy, it might even be that I need to take the wheel, if the captain's not there. So yeah, but I want to just thank Vlad. I just want to thank you so much for being our host through this series, to help the viewers through this, and for the wonderful questions, the wonderful heart that you brought to this. I want to just thank everybody who's tuned into this series, and please do post any thoughts if you must. But I'd be far more interested. By the way, can I just say one last thing? Have I got time to say one last thing?
Go ahead.
Some people might watch this and say it's thought-provoking. I've got one of my quotes that says, somebody once said, I said something thought-provoking. I've no interest in being thought-provoking. I'd far rather go down as one who is thought-disposing. So maybe that's just a nice last playful thing to end here. I'd far rather go down as we've got some, who needs more thoughts? Somebody once said, who needs more thoughts? I'd far rather go down as one who is thought-disposing. For sure. Okay, and I want to just leave you with this. Care about people, yes. Care about how people feel, for sure. Care about what people think, beware. Compassion. Compassion, compassion, compassion. Yeah.
Thank you, Rasheed. Thank you for the wise and kind words, and thank you for being with us. Maybe that's the best thing to be grateful for in this series. Thank you for you just showing up from the heart and being with us.
Such a pleasure, such a joy, such a joy. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for your time, for your kindness, for your presence, for being here.